Aida Touma-Sliman is a member of the Israeli Parliament, or Knesset, from the joint list Hadash, Democratic Front for Peace and Equality. She is also the chairwoman of Knesset's Standing Committee on the Status of Women and Gender Equality, the first Arab MK to occupy such a position in Israel. From 2011 to 2015, she was the chief editor of Al-Ittihad, the only Arabic newspaper published in Israel, and is a co-founder and member of International Women's Commission for Just Peace, Israel-Palestine. Aida Touma is currently a member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of Israel. She is also president of Peace and Solidarity Committee of Israel and one of the most staunch fighters for the rights of Palestinians and the peace and the rights of all peoples around the world. We are very much honored to introduce you, Aida Touma.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much, Bahman, for this introduction. And allow me first, really, to thank the U.S. Peace Council and the Brooklyn Peace Council and Joe for allowing this meeting to happen, for organizing, for endorsing my tour, and for inviting me from the beginning to be here. To tell the truth, if we take out all the horrible political situation back home, usually I love to answer such invitations because it gives us an opportunity to meet peace activists from all over the world and to echo our voices and to make our opinion heard in different places in the world. I do believe in solidarity among people, and I do believe that anyone who is struggling for a just cause need all the solidarity that we can raise from all over the world. So when I was asked by Bahman to do this tour by the U.S. Peace Council, we thought that we will be focusing, and we will, but mainly on the situation in the Palestinian occupied territories and mainly on Gaza situation, since from the beginning of March, the Gaza had started what we call the big march, return march, and it has been going on since that time, causing, for my regret, a loss of many lives and causing for a terrible situation inside Gaza. We thought we will be focusing on that, but it looks like Netanyahu's government, the Israeli current government, give us a lot of issues to be discussed and a lot of issues to focus on. And it came up with the law, the basic law that probably you all were hearing about, the Israel, the nation state law of the Jewish people. This is a basic law that was legislated in the Knesset just before we left to our summer recess, like 1 hour before we left. Exactly, at 5 o'clock in the morning, like thieves at night. The law was voted on, and for my regret, it passed, and it became a basic law in Israel. And with legislating this law officially, Israel has become, in my opinion, the only and the last apartheid regime in this world. Why I'm saying this, and many people would tell me, but what's new? Israel has been discriminating against its Palestinian citizens and practicing policies of oppression against the Palestinians in the occupied territories since 70 years ago. And what is new about a law that is giving a very basic base for discrimination and for avoiding even to think about equality and democracy. What's new? And I think there is a lot to speak about when we are talking about this law. I would like just to remind those who attended my speech 3 years ago. Actually, this month it's going to be 3 years when I visited the United States in a speaking tour, and I was just elected. It was 2 months after we were elected to the Knesset. We were full of energy. We thought, after being together in the joint list, which I don't know how many of you knows about this achievement, that we managed to put together 4 different parties and to run for the Knesset together, although we are coming from a different ideological backgrounds, from the Islamists till the communists, came together. And the main idea was behind bringing those 4 parties together is to give a big answer to also another law that was legislated 1 cadency before, is raising the threshold for the Knesset in a way that will never allow any of the 4 parties who are representing mainly the Palestinian community inside Israel and the democratic Jewish forces to be represented in the Knesset. That was the main purpose of that law. And when everybody thought that the right wing in Israel managed to find a way to keep us away from being politically represented in the Knesset, we managed to put together the joint list. We went to election, and actually we raised the number of MKs who are representing the joint list into 13 members, and we became the 3rd fraction in the Knesset, the 3rd to be represented in the Knesset. And we thought, great, now we have an opportunity really to influence things and to change, and maybe to direct the political situation in Israel into more democracy, into more equality, into more peaceful policies that might get to eventually to a situation where we end the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories. It looks like the reaction from the right wing was very aggressive. When I remember how I gave my speech then, I knew that when I was speaking to people here in the United States, some of the audience looked very strangely to me and thought that maybe I'm exaggerating and that maybe I'm a little bit imagining things about Israel and about the right wing in Israel. Because mainly I was speaking about 3 major policies that will be led by Netanyahu's government for this cadency. The first one was Netanyahu, 1 day before the last election in 2015, promised that he will do all the efforts to avoid establishing a Palestinian state beside Israel, 1 day before the election. And I thought that in this cadency, Netanyahu will really work hard to implement his promise, to avoid and actually to eliminate the possibility to create a Palestinian state beside the state of Israel. The second one was the incitement against the Palestinian community, the Arab citizens of Israel. And if you remember very well, not 1 day before the election, but on the day of the election, Netanyahu said his famous sentence, "They are coming in groups to vote, and you should rescue the situation." He called upon the Jewish majority to come and to vote because the Arabs are coming and voting. And everyone looked at it as an expression of racism. And I took it a little bit further and I said it's not only racist way to speak about your own citizens who are practicing a very basic right of voting, of participating. Usually people, and I know in the United States you are looking for a situation where all the citizens take their responsibility of participating and voting very seriously. In Israel, it looks the opposite way. When people are taking their responsibility seriously and coming to vote and to influence, they are dangerous. They are called as dangerous group, as if they are acting in a terrorist way. And this is not only a racist way to put it, but also anti-democratic. And I think we noticed from that point that Netanyahu is taking off the mask of the last or the only democracy in the Middle East. And he is going with his government to act to eliminate as possible the democracy element or the democratic basis that is still existing in the regime in Israel. The third thing that was emphasized at that point is that we noticed that he's, with his government, is going to attack all the other columns or other parts of democratic regime, like the judiciary system and the media in Israel. When you look today at what's happening in the last 3 years, you understand that the basic law, which I mentioned in the beginning, the Jewish nation-state law, is actually a result of a process that did start way back, not only in the last cadency, not from 2015. This law was brought to the Knesset first in 2011. And not by Likud members. It was brought by who is now sitting in the Zionist camp. Actually, it was brought from the beginning by Tzipi Livni's party. There were different versions. Meanwhile, they changed a little bit in the articles of the law, but the last version that was legislated 1 month ago, actually, it's today, 1 month ago. It's a horrible law. It should be an alert for everybody who's still thinking that the situation in Israel is proceeding to a better situation. At the contrary, we believe that this law, as I said in the beginning, is bringing us into a dangerous situation. Not because this law is affecting and have implications on the lives and on the rights of the Palestinian citizens of Israel, but there are different 3 groups of Arabs who are affected directly by this law. One is the Palestinian citizens of Israel. Second is the Palestinians, residents of East Jerusalem or of Jerusalem. And third are the Syrians who are living in the Golan occupied heights. These 3 groups will be affected directly because this law is putting them, not even, in the beginning we used to say we are a second-degree citizens. By this law, we are totally absent. We didn't get the second degree or the third degree citizenship, because if you read the articles of the law, we do not exist there. This law is supposed to define the state of Israel, to define who are the citizens, who are the people of the state, and what are the different components that bring together a state. Like the anthem, like the flag, like all the components. When the law mention who are the people that this state belongs to, or they belong to the state, we are not mentioned at all. It's the state for the Jewish people all over the world, not only citizens of Israel, but all over the world. In this law, Israel actually opened its borders totally. There is no borders written in this law. It's not mentioned it's mentioned what is the flag. It mentions what is the anthem. It mentions who are the people. It mentions who are the superior people inside Israel, but not the borders. And what is more dangerous is the fact that the law starts with two words. It starts with the land of Israel. Land of Israel by the Bible is supposed to be from the sea to the river. The biblical land of Israel is not only including the West Bank, but it might also reach to Jordan and beginning of Iraq. And when you are legislating a basic law that is the major component of the future constitution of Israel, and you do not mention the borders, and at the same time, sometimes in the articles you are using land of Israel and sometimes state of Israel, in order to create this confusion as if land of Israel is the same like state of Israel, then actually what you are saying is that you are talking about the whole historical Palestine, or what is called in the basic law, the whole historical land of Israel. Why we think like this? I think sometimes the context that a law is legislated in is very important in interpretation of the law itself. When the whole context is talking about annexation of land, annexation of settlements, which are existing on a Palestinian land in the West Bank. When you see that 26 laws are brought into the Knesset, legislated in the last 2 years, and those laws are racist, are directed against the Palestinian community and the Palestinian people, and it is also including components of annexation of Palestinian occupied land, then you have to interpret this mixture of Israel land and state of Israel as speaking about the whole historical Palestinian land. Why I'm saying this? Because another article is very clear, said in this basic law, that Jerusalem, unified Jerusalem, meaning East and West Jerusalem, of course, which is hosting now the embassy of the United States, regretfully, is going to be the eternal capital of Israel. This is one article of the law, that the unified Jerusalem is going to be the eternal capital of Israel. This is against the international law and against the international resolutions, because the international resolutions says very clearly that Jerusalem is an occupied territory. East Jerusalem is an occupied territory, and it's supposed to be, and we hope that it's going to be the capital of Palestine alongside Israel. When Israel says very clearly, when the Knesset legislates that the unified Jerusalem is going to be the eternal capital of Israel, the Knesset is going against the international law. And this law cannot be legal as long as it is in contradiction in many of its components to the international law. I said, what is new about this law? If discrimination has existed, and it existed in Israel, against the Arab citizens of Israel, against the Palestinian citizens of Israel. What is new about this law is that discrimination is stopping to be the not normal situation. Actually, this law creates a situation where discrimination is legal. Discrimination is the norma. And equality is the abnormal situation. Through the basic law, there is not even once the word equality is mentioned, or democracy. And usually in any constitution, equality for all citizens of the state is one of the conditions for having any constitution. Usually, constitutions are built on two conditions: consent among the people of the state, and I'm telling you, consent, there is no in this law. There is no consent, and it was passed by 62 members of the parliament versus 55 of the Knesset, and 2 abstains. So consent, there is no. Nobody asked the opinion of 20% of the citizens of Israel, the Palestinians, what they think about this basic law. And when we said clearly that we are against this law, nobody wanted to listen to that. Now, the second condition for any constitutional legislation is the fact that it should guarantee equality of treatment for all citizens of any country and guarantee individual and collective rights for minorities. And this law, it's not just that it does not guarantee. At the contrary, it says very clearly that it's going to discriminate against 20% of the people who are citizens of Israel. It says very clearly in different items, but also in one clear article that says that developing and initiating Jewish settlements is a national priority. It's written very clearly, and even I can read it for you from the law itself. It says like this: the state views the development of Jewish settlement as a national value and shall act to encourage and promote its establishment and strengthening. Which means all the discriminatory policies that could have been challenged in the past, either by public actions or by legal processes, going to the Supreme Court, trying to challenge these policies, trying politically to affect the situation on the ground, it's going to change from now. At the contrary, now who can really appeal to the Supreme Court? Those who do not want equality, those who want to intensify the discrimination. And I will give you just a very simple example. We have what is called development budgets that is given to the local authorities by the central government in order to enhance and develop the situation in the different localities. In the past, there was discrimination in these budgets. We could appeal to the Supreme Court and ask for equal budgets as full citizens of the country, of the state. Now, if there will be any minister in the future who would dare to think that he should give equal budgets to localities, Jewish localities and Arab localities, this policy, equal policy, can be challenged now bases on this law in the Supreme Court, going to the Supreme Court saying, no, he cannot treat us equally, because it is written in the basic law that Jewish settlements have a superiority and have a special treatment from now on. So the norm has came upside down from equality as a norm, and you can challenge discrimination. Discrimination is going to be the norm, and you have to challenge it, and you can't challenge it. Of course, there is also in that law, I think this law, we can speak very much about the civil rights by this law. But the most dangerous side of this law actually lays in the fact that it's an attempt to close the door, finally, on the two-state solution. And of course, you hear very much these days about the century deal. I can see that you already know what I'm going to speak about. Nobody knows about the century deal. Nobody knows what it's going to be like, it looks like. And I would suggest for you to read this basic law, because in my opinion, it contains all what is thought about to be the century deal. Why I'm saying this? This law is not only challenging the future of democracy, equality, full citizenship inside Israel. It is challenging the historical narrative of that piece of land back home in the Middle East that is called by some Land of Israel, and it's called by some historical Palestine. Why I'm saying this? Because it says from the beginning, the Land of Israel is the historical homeland of the Jewish people in which the state of Israel was established. The state of Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people in which it realizes its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination. It says very clearly, you remember the slogan, people with no land came to a land with no people? It's the free interpretation by this, or translation in this law. It says it erased the whole Palestinian narrative and only concentrate on one narrative. In my opinion, it's not a Jewish narrative, it's the Zionist narrative. And for me, there is a difference between the Zionist narrative and the Jewish narrative. And in this law, it says, one article says, in Israel, there is a right of self-determination solely for the Jewish people, which means that it denies the right of self-determination for the Palestinian people. And if you remember that we said in the beginning that this law keeps the borders of Israel open, it does not say where are the borders of Israel, and it uses the term of land of Israel. It means that in the whole land of Israel, there is only the right of self-determination for the Jewish people. Equal, no right of self-determination for the Palestinian people. And it's only the beginning for denying the whole agreed upon solution for the continuous occupation of the Palestinian territories occupied in 1967. When there is no right of self-determination, when Jerusalem united is the eternal capital of Israel, when historically this is the land of the Jewish people, then actually we are not only closing the door, we are finalizing that there will never be, this law is finalizing that there will never be a state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel. This law is in two levels. On one hand, it is creating this new political situation toward the issue of occupation and creating of an anti-democratic regime inside Israel. It's not only anti-democratic, we claim that it is establishing officially the apartheid regime inside Israel. And why we are saying an apartheid regime? Because there are very clear components. When you deny the fact that there are 20% of your citizens, when you do not agree to include equality, and you do not agree to include democracy, and you say that one part of your citizens are superior to others, what it is? What does it mean, actually? We claimed in the past that there is a deep contradiction between the definition of a Jewish and democratic state. And of course, there was a lot of debate going on that, because some Jewish people believed that, no, there is a possibility to continue to be a Jewish state and to be democratic. And we claim that whenever there is a contradiction, and there is contradictions between a Jewish state and democratic state, the state usually wanted and supported the Jewishness of the state over the democratic side of the state. Now it's very clear. When we got to a situation of contradiction, the state, the Knesset, said very clearly by this law, end of story. We don't need to get into that dilemma anymore. Democracy is aside. Democracy is neglected from the basic law. It's not mentioned as the way the regime will exist in Israel, and it's going to be only Jewish. And I think this is a clear statement that is coming out of this law. Even when we are talking about the language of the state. You know, by this law, suddenly they mentioned that the language of the state is Hebrew. The only official language is Hebrew. Many argue and say, but there is nothing in the Israeli laws that says Arabic was an official language in Israel. This is not true, by the way. This is not true because Israel, when it was established, it adopted a law, an Ottoman law, that is relating to many things in the ordinary life of the people, like the personal status issues, how they run their religious lives. And among others, this law said very clearly that there are three official languages in historical Palestine: English, Hebrew, and Arabic. They denied English as the official language, and now they are canceling Arabic as an official language. So if we in the past could appeal to the Supreme Court and say we need all the services delivered by the state, all the official documents can be also produced in Arabic, you can testify in a court in Arabic, in your own language, and the court should bring a translator to translate your testimony. Now we cannot do it. The Arabic is not an official language, actually. And the best example is in our joint list, there is a rotation agreement that was supposed to be practiced last month. And our member of Knesset, who should resign in order to have a new member coming in, introduced on the 8th of August his resigning document to the Speaker of the House of the Knesset in Arabic. And the Speaker of the Knesset refused to sign it and to accept it because it is not an official language. Of course, he had some, there was a big media issue around it, and we said very clearly, look, this is the first practice of what does it mean, how it's going to look like in the future. Of course, he had some legal advisor telling him that you should not say it's not an official language. It's better to say, I cannot read Arabic. I cannot sign something that I do not understand. And then he sent it for translation, and then he signed it. But this is how it's going to be from now on. If any Arab citizen will come to the court to give a testimony and say, I cannot do it in Hebrew, I want to do it in Arabic, he cannot do it. If anyone wants to take any kind of service from an official office and come and ask to have it in Arabic, he won't have it because it's not an official language. For us, Arabic, official or not official, it's not only a language. Arabic is a culture. Arabic is a way of life. Arabic is our way of expression. Arabic is our literature, is our history. It's way beyond being an official language or not. It is connected to our, I don't know how you say it in English. I know how I say it in Arabic, of our sumud. Is there anything in English for sumud?
Steadfastness.
Okay, steadfast. Okay, steadfast.
To stay in place. Yeah.
Oh, to stay in place. This is one of our way of staying in our homeland and continue to be as a national group developing and evolving. So for us, it's going to be official or not. This is the language that we are going to protect because it's one of our way to protect ourselves. As indigenous people, as a national minority, as whatever you would like to think about. Now, if I would have come to this tour 2 weeks ago, I would tell you that you say that you don't want to speak about the general situation because you will make people depressed. I would have came here very depressed, to tell you the truth, if I came 2 weeks before now. But last Saturday, exactly like this timing, no, actually not this timing back home. Last Saturday, we were more than 60,000 people in Tel Aviv streets marching against the nation-state law. And the good thing, we were not Palestinian Arabs alone. We were Jews and Arabs, Israelis, marching in the streets of Tel Aviv and saying we are not going to tolerate or coexist with this law. There is no coexistence with this law. We are going to resist this law, and we are going to abolish this law. That's a decision we made. Now, a lot of people say, how you are going to abolish, a basic law? How you are going to do it? A lot of our people, even in the beginning when we started talking about this, said, you are dreaming. And I said, you know what? Our fathers, our grandfathers lived under the military regime since 1948 up till 1965, and all that time there were crazy dreamers like me who said we are going to abolish the military regime, and it happened. They managed to do it. They succeeded to do it. And it was abolished, and we could continue after that. Not happily ever after, but we continued. And that's the situation with this law. We are not going to tolerate a situation where anybody is telling us that there are superior people and there are some people, 20% of the citizens of Israel, who their status is not defined, who their status is not mentioned. We are not going to tolerate a situation where any law is telling us that our people are going to continue to live under occupation. The Palestinians do not want to live under occupation. You see them since March in Gaza marching every Friday in the return march because they do not want to continue to live in that situation. And in the West Bank, also the people are very determined to get rid of the Israeli occupation. And you know what? There are Israeli Jewish people who want to get rid of that occupation because they are not paying the same price for that policy like the Palestinians under occupation, but they are still paying a price, and they do not want to continue. For all those reasons, we started to work very hardly the day after the law, and we are going to continue our resistance to this law, and we are going to continue to work against it on 4 different levels. Parliamentarian, and I have to tell you, there were voices among us saying you have to abstain your, suspend your membership in the Knesset because of this law. And we have, and I'm at least, have this opinion, and my party have this opinion. At the contrary, they wanted to push us away from the Knesset last cadency by raising the threshold, and we came back even stronger. Now they want to push us out of the legal citizen, equal citizenship, and we are going to continue, and we will be stronger, and we are going to change it. We are going to work in the parliament also to change this reality. Now, it's not going to be easy, and I will mention it a little, in a little bit. The other level we are continuing is, you know, in the mass protest against this law. We started that in this big demonstration. It was the first step, and we are continuing. We will have more actions in the future, and we would like to see you part of the solidarity movement with us whenever we are having actions back there. The third is the legal, because we appealed to the Supreme Court, and there are now 8 appeals in front of the Israeli Supreme Court against this law. We are not that hopeful because, for my regret, as I mentioned in the beginning, the current very right-wing government managed to change the situation inside the judiciary system and inside the Supreme Court. They managed to appoint, and they said it very clearly, we want to appoint, they want a pluralist judiciary system. So they brought in more very right-wing settlers, judges into the Supreme Court. That's why we are not hopeful that maybe the Supreme Court will say this law cannot exist, but at least they have to address this law, and they have to criticize it. There is no way to avoid that, and we will use whatever comes from there to intensify the struggle against it. The third is the international arena, and coming here and talking to you is part of that effort. is part of the effort of making the world understand that we are confronting a new situation in Israel, and that the old paradigm cannot continue. And there is a new reality, and everybody should understand that, on the level of the people and on the level of the decision makers. I'm not going to speak to your president at this point, but we are going to be in contact with different governments all over the world in order to make them understand what does it mean to hold all the people inside Israel and the Palestinian people captured by this law, hostages by this law, and condemned for a life without democracy, without equality, and under an apartheid regime. I said in the beginning, and I will emphasize again, this law is actually challenging two things. It's not only challenging the Palestinians, it's challenging the Jews also in Israel. It's challenging the narrative, the history, and it's challenging the future of the people, both people. And I think it's about time to say it very clearly. Maybe, in one of my presentations about this law to people from my constituency, one of the old men in the audience told me, "Why you are so angry about this law? All those governments, all those regimes who took that path collapsed eventually. All those who started to act in a fascist way, in such a way, eventually had to go." And I said, yes, but it didn't happen by itself. This is the main issue. Their people did not sit and wait for them to collapse. We need to make them collapse. We need to act very seriously. And I think it's not up to anybody to decide that the Palestinian people should continue to suffer. A lot of people would say this is a beginning of the one-state solution. I'm saying this kind of a one-state solution, it's not the beginning of that kind. It's already existing, but it is not a democratic, secular, equal one state. It's an apartheid state. And this is what is demanded now from the Palestinians, as if to accept, to sit and wait and to see that this apartheid regime continue to control for many years to come until it collapses. No, it doesn't work like this. History have taught us that it doesn't work like this, and people will continue to fight for a better future. I said in the beginning, it's not going to be easy to abolish this law, because for my regret, the majority of those who voted against the law, and I mean the so-called Zionist left parties, are not raising the demand of abolishing this law. They are saying, let's correct it. Let's make some changes in that law. And you have to remember that part of those who voted against it now have submitted different versions of that law in the last 7-8 years. So actually, we need now to bring the real discussion into the surface of what kind of a state of Israel you want to live in. And what kind it means you need to define. Is it going to be a colonial state like it is now by this law? Is it going to be the state, I call this law, it's the annexation law of the state of Israel to the state of settlers. It's not annexating the settlers to the state of Israel. It's annexating Israel to the state of settlers that is already controlling very much inside Israel. And this discussion is going to take some time inside Israel to evolve into a normal situation. This situation will never be there, a normal democratic situation, without ending the occupation over the Palestinian people in 1967 territories, and without establishing the Palestinian state alongside the state of Israel, with, of course, East Jerusalem as its capital and the right of return for all the refugees. You know, 2 months ago, you would have heard all the Knesset members, or the ministers, all the media in Hebrew, saying about us, the Arab Palestinian MKs, that we do not deal with the rights of our own constituency. We are all the time focusing on the Palestinian issue in general. And of course, it would have been an honor to be called that this is what I'm doing. This is not, we are doing both. But for the first time, the Knesset admitted by its basic law that there is no way to distinguish between the two issues. There is no way to separate the struggle for the civil rights inside Israel from the anti-occupation struggle and for peace struggle. They decided for the first time to admit it and to bring it in a law. We knew that since the beginning, and we will continue to fight in that way. Thank you.